Welcome to seminar. We are going to talk about radio, and one really interesting question is that what is the future of radio? My name is Laine. I've been working in Finland in a couple of radios, like with the Juhani Kansi. I've been working in Yle, Finnish broadcasting company. Then I went to Radio City and finally Radio Helsinki. And Radio Helsinki is represented also today by Tomi Ruotimo, who is the new owner of the channel, of the radio channel. There was last autumn there was a huge battle over Radio Helsinki because they wanted to kill the radio station, and then came Tomi Ruotimo and saves it, kind of. And now we still have the radio channel. But Tomi Ruotimo is the one who is from commercial radio, and the other gentlemen and a lady there, they are from EBU radios, like public broadcasting services. There is sitting Nenne Zetterberg-Sundqvist, who is a producer from Sveriges Radio. Next to her is Ian Wilson from Ireland. He's also a producer. Then Tomi Ruotimo from Radio Helsinki. Jan Sneum, how do you pronounce? Jan Sneum. Okay, that's correct. He's a journalist and also a producer in Danish Broadcasting Corporation. And then finally, Laurent Marceau. And he's the head of Eurosonic and Radio Plus. Welcome, and welcome you all. Let's start about the present situation. Laurent, how do you think, how is radio doing now?
Do you want the good or the bad news first?
Let's start with the bad and get better.
Well, okay. I mean, it's like two sides of a coin. The bad news is the listeners are not getting any younger. They are getting older. This is the bigger picture, the big picture. The good news, which is actually very good still, is that the daily reach of radio in Europe is extremely high. If you put all the countries of Europe together, the daily reach is still 80%. In some territories, it's up to 95%. So one can complain. People do listen to the radio on a daily basis a lot. So that's a good thing. The challenge is obviously to bring back or to invite to the young people to jump on board to enjoy the wonderful medium that is radio.
But is it same situation with public broadcasting and commercial radios?
Yeah, I think we are all on the same boat. Obviously, you've got differences. And then if we talk about what we like here is music and radio. I mean, radio and music. And bearing in mind, as I said, that young people seem to be more difficult to convince to listen to radio today. So that's the big challenge for radio. And in that context, I think commercial stations, and by commercial stations, I mean really like proper commercial stations, they are also struggling. On the other hand, many of them are also really facing, they face tough issues, but they are also surviving and doing fairly well. So, I mean, it's not a black and white situation, you know, but it's challenging.
But what is the reason that young people don't find radio so attractive anymore?
I don't know. I keep on asking my children.
And what do they answer?
Well, actually, they do listen to radio without realizing that sometimes they do listen to radio, if you see what I mean, you know, because the devices they listen to are very different. They might even end up sometimes listening to a radio show because it's being streamed on YouTube and they like it. I suppose they've got so many ways to access music these days, and even though they like music, I mean, the cake, the slices of the cake are smaller, but there are more slices now. So to a certain extent, my wonderful colleagues have had to learn to share the cake. Because a few years ago, talking about music and radio, we had the lovely privilege to be here to provide music, to prescribe music, to make people. And now today, I mean, music is accessible by so many ways, you know. You can access music via web logs, via Pitchfork, consequence of sound via YouTube, Spotify, you name it. I mean, you know all of them. So the competition is bloody difficult and bloody strong. On the other hand, I mean, radio are there also to put together good programs, the same programs that could still actually, that can still also be made available on the same platforms anyway. So, I mean, the future is not as bleak as it sounds sometimes.
But how about Tomi? I know personally, I've been battling with Radio Helsinki quite many years. I was the editor-in-chief of the channel before you saved the channel. But the situation is still hard. What is the thing? Radio Helsinki, for example, is the only commercial radio in Finland, and I think almost in whole Europe, where you don't have any playlist. All the DJs are playing their own music. They choose their own music. The content is good, but what is the problem?
Thank you, Anna. We almost have to define what the word radio is meaning nowadays. We have only 1 hour, so I do not come to that. But there are two things. First of all, as you said, it's complicated. There are Spotify, there is YouTube, there is iTunes, there are all those platforms which, to me, act as a radio. If we talk about youngsters, we have to go digital. There is you all professionals know about DAB, digital audio broadcasting, which comes eventually to the cars. So FM is not the only platform. We have to be multi-channeled. As we know, TV went into digital world in 20 years ago. HTV, HDTV came, multiple channels, all the real shows where you can use your mobile or your pad as a second screen. I strongly think that radio can work that way as well. We have built in Helsinki now, we have built a loyalty program for Radio Helsinki fans called Friends of Radio Helsinki or Radio Helsinki Friends, which is payable. They do pay in order to listen radio, although it's free, but it's stupid to not to pay radio if the content is good. So they will pay. We have over 100,000 listeners. We have built an ecosystem comprising of big corporations like Finnair, Stockmann, which is the biggest department store in Helsinki, Elisa, which is one of the telco providers, and those gang, and there are things like Live Nation, which is one of the biggest kind of a live act providers in the whole world. Those members of the ecosystem will provide the listeners services via mobile devices like mobile phones. So basically, you said that the youngsters do not listen radio anymore, but what if radios, I believe that, and I trust that radio still is kind of a civilized channel for the youngsters to reach the new music. That's the only channel almost where consumers will find new music that they do not know yet. And if you can buy the song from your mobile phone or from your pad or from your whatever is the gadget where you will hear the streamed music. Once you hear, if I hear Pharrell Williams' Happy first time, I can buy it immediately from that stream where I find it. That kind of a digital second screen honeypot things we are building now in Helsinki, and I believe strongly that's the only option where we can survive in the future. Sorry, long and difficult.
Well, that's the commercial point. And what does public broadcasting, for example, in Sweden say?
No, it was actually. It wasn't no. I strongly believe in radio, and I strongly believe, maybe it's just self-protective that I have to believe, that curated musical content will be attractive, because the more you have access to, the more difficult it is to find what you are looking for, because you don't really know what you're looking for. So curated musical content, I do believe that people who are interested in music always will appreciate. I think there is a fine balance though for the radio, that they have to, I think I was very impressed. I didn't know that you had no playlist. You have DJs who chose out of their own mind. I think that is maybe a way to get the interesting curated musical content by having personalities choose it and not a playlist, because there are playlists everywhere. I can get as many clicks, I can get like 100 new playlists from friends and musical journalists and whatever on Spotify. But to have one personality that you connect to, choosing the music, and you feel that you are on the same frequency as that person, I think that can be very attractive and a good way to serve the audience with curated musical content. And I also believe in digital radio. You have to go digital. I mean, for the reach and for the mobility and to access more channels, to be able to specialize the content a little bit more, because now the young kids, they are used to get what they want. They don't want to hear every third song being a hip-hop song if you don't like hip-hop. Maybe you want to narrow it down a little bit, and also for the ages that are in between the youth channels and the elderly people. I mean, to be able to sort of take out what's too young and too teeny, and focus a little bit more on, well, what you like. So you have a possibility to narrow it down on more channels. I think that's important.
Yeah, sorry. Just while we're on the subject of mobile devices and access, one of the fundamental problems is that the telecom providers, the internet providers, the telephone companies, have a stranglehold on what's in your mobile phone, your mobile device, and they make it perfectly clear to the handset manufacturers they do not want free-to-air services on the handsets. And because your mobile phone provider subsidizes the phone so heavily, when you actually buy a phone, unless you buy a SIM-free phone, very few people are going to walk out and pay 600 or 700 euro to buy an iPhone. They're going to get it as part of their contract, and they're going to get it for 100 euro or 50 euro, and that's how it goes. And very few people are putting DAB chips in mobile phones, and hardly anybody offers FM in mobile phones anymore. And until that conundrum is cracked, so that people realize your mobile device will not only give you stuff you have to pay for in data, but it will give you free material, which is free to air. So we're in the bizarre position of a huge number of our young people are now paying to get a service that is actually broadcast free, because there's no connection between the FM, DAB broadcast and your mobile device, except via the internet. Now, I know the EBU are working on this, but this is very, very important for radio, that it press to make sure that mobile devices, mobile handsets carry receivers in them for DAB or whatever system we're broadcasting on. Until that happens, I think we've a bit of a problem in radio generally. So, and the telcos, I was seeing the figures from Estonia, where in the media market, something like 80-something% of all the money in the media market is soaked up by the telco companies. So there's only a tiny proportion available for the broadcasters in the whole media market, and that's until such time as the telco providers are taken on and these matters are sorted out. The radio is going to become a prisoner of the internet, whether it likes it or not. Well, for young people anyway, because I know no young person who will go and buy a radio.
Yeah, I have the microphone. No, I just want to. So many topic has been touched already, but returning to Laurent and the talk about the youngsters, what in my institution in Denmark, what the head of the station discussed is to move away from what we up until now have been called programming. You know, I grew up in a period when you went off school and you turned on the radio at 3 o'clock. There was an hour for me when I was a teenager. Nobody using radio in that sense anymore. So instead of talking about programming, we're going to talk about publishing. And it doesn't mean that we should publish scores or book, but we will publish things for as many platforms as possible. For example, just last week we published 10 one-hour multimedia packages about new and upcoming Danish music artists. and those packages are available on a download basis, on a podcast basis. You can watch them on your computer, you can see them on your phone, you can use them in connection with what any age group would find interesting at the moment. So there's this big change from thinking in old flow radio with broadcast, follow broadcast, with some kind of identity in the music in order to make people aware that now they're listening to P3 or Radio 2 or whoever, but instead be present at as many platforms as possible. But of course, it's something that creates other kind of problems, because suddenly the whole rights issue becomes new. We have, being a partner in an old-fashioned public service radio, we have been there for more than 80 years. We have a lot of rules and restrictions and definition of broadcast. As soon as you go into podcast and things, you are not a broadcaster, you are a narrowcaster, or what the word are. So there will be new rules and regulations. But in my country, the two main music channels for young people, P3 and P6, every single hour is available as a podcast, which means that everything has been cleared with the record companies. So if I'm a teenager and I have no knowledge of the scheduling of the day programming or the night programming, it doesn't matter, because it's there. If I want to listen to this program curated by someone, or I want to hear this heavy rock magazine, I can just be a subscriber. And we are also trying to see how far can we go in putting program content produced by DR, the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, into the world of Facebook, YouTube. And we have been able to progress pretty far, which might not in the end solve the problems, but on the other hand, it's a way of moving away from the very fixed radio format where you have a time schedule running every day and you have to be at home or be in your car or being with your mobile radio to hear something at a specific time of the day. And listening to what you were saying and seeing, there was a presentation yesterday for us from the broadcaster side of the listeners' figures or patterns in Estonia. It's exactly like any other European countries. As soon as you get up in the morning at 6 o'clock, there's a lot of people listening to the radio, and then after dinner time, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, then it fade out, and then the night is the battlefield for anyone who wants to hear music. Who will be the winner? And for us, as the Danish radio, we hope that if we can be on as many platforms as possible without forcing the people to be still living in the way we did when the society was a very industrialized society where everybody got up at 6 and went to work, and then everybody was home at 6. Then hopefully we will cope with competition as it is now. It is going fairly well when it comes to music. You were mentioning 95% of listeners listening to the public service broadcast in some countries. In my country, it's 86%. We are 5.5 million. Every week, 4.1 million Danes are listening more than an hour to Danish radio. So it's not that bad, but competition is coming, and I can talk more about that.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that every single panelist is with me in this multi-channel kind of a linear radio, as you said, and what you told Ian about the telco companies. Me as a representative of the commercial radio, I'm kind of very pleased to say that I can always join them rather than I know that if we talk about media broader, your neighboring country UK, now BT has bundled the whole football into their bundle, and no one in the British households cannot see football anymore without buying BT's bundle. That's one thing, that the media telco companies are media companies. Gadget companies like Apple, Google, or whoever is a media company at the moment. So basically we have to see them as well competitors, or then join them if you can't win them. And what you say about the can't remember anymore. Well, about at least about the multi-channel things. I'm dead positive that tomorrow's radio, FM is never going to die. I'm a great FM fan. It's been there 100 years. It's not like digital against analog like it was in like photographing. You know, in photographing we used to take analog pictures, now we take digital pictures. But it's not the same within media business, it's not the same within radio business. But still, it's going to be multi-channel. There's going to be second screens. Like now, if I watch Formula One on my home sofa, I have maybe iPad watching different cameras. And when I'm hearing radio tomorrow, I can have my iPhone entering a competition or whatever through the radio, through the program. It's interactive. Radio is the first social media. Radio was the first social media in the world.
Actually, I think it was the contact telephones.
Well, it was
Remember,
like
when you can.
it was
you
like
could
person
phone
to person
someone,
talking.
yeah.
It was the first of person to person talk.
But hey, let's talk about content a bit, because without being age-resistic, it's a bit funny that we are talking that radio is not finding any new listeners anymore. And look at us. Like, oh, where's the young people? Here. We are doing the radio for young people, but what is this? Is there some new things coming when you consider the content? What is the future of content of the radio? Nenne.
I've no idea, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the problem. We are too old for that.
Yeah, we're too old, but I don't think the content we provide is the problem, really, without knowing too much about it, because I'm not involved in planning our programming or anything. I'm just a simple producer. But I think the content we are providing is basically really good. I think it's an excellent choice of music. It is music for younger people. I think the problem is that we have a big competition, and our old companies, we are not used to fight on this arena. And I think that what we need to do is to go out there and be hip. We have to raise our hip factor, because we want to be the station that they listen to wherever they listen. I don't care where they listen. They can choose. And for them, it's not an issue. For them, it's like, of course I listen there or there or there. It depends on what I have, where I am. So I don't think I think we are more obsessed with the technical devices than we need to be. We need to focus on the content and focus on being where they are and be the cool thing to be. I mean, to be out there, do events, do whatever, just be there and be cool and invite them to be part of that cool P3 Swedish radio family in one way or another. I think that's more important, because content is, I mean, that's the one thing we know that is not a problem.
Just on this age thing, I mean, Komsomol, wasn't it, was the Russian youth organization. I mean, it was nothing unusual for them to have 50-year-olds running the youth organization. So, I mean, we have a long history of very old people running youth organizations. Very proud history, I think, yeah. Yeah. I know, yeah, I'm too fucking old for it. You're right. My problem is that the younger people coming along in our public broadcaster, they just haven't chosen cool young people. And if they have chosen cool young people as producers or background staff, they've put them into what they consider important programs, like politics and current affairs and art. And so I'm the old dinosaur left there, because there's nobody else coming up behind me there is a problem of am I bitter? Don't start me on bitter. No, there is a problem of succession. There is a generation of music producers and event producers and so on in the public broadcasters, and they just haven't done enough to renew the people. I would love to give up sitting around in fields for weeks at a time, dealing with stroppy musicians and the mud up to my ankles and rain falling on my head and stuff not working and all, and concert promoters in my ear and bad food and no sleep. I mean, why the hell would anybody want to do that? Yeah. So I wish there were still a lot of young people to do that kind of shit now, but it just doesn't happen like that, I'm afraid. The public broadcasters have a problem. They don't renew, because we're all civil servants, they don't renew their staff often enough. They don't bring in enough new people through. They don't have proper succession policies to ensure that the youth stations, inverted commas, are refreshed all the time. And the simple reason is that the public broadcasters are still obsessed, a lot of them, with the fact they're serious music, serious art, serious culture, serious politics, seriously boring, some of it, yeah, serious sports, yeah, but they don't really take the young people seriously. They don't take music seriously, except insofar as it's high art. So there is still this cultural problem about music, youth culture, whatever you like to call it, in some of the public broadcasters. They just don't see it as a priority because it's fucking young people, and young people are difficult, they're awkward, they don't know anything. You know this. I mean, God's sake. I mean, I'm a parent. I have children. I mean, young people, geez, they're just a pain in the arse. Yeah. Why would you want to deal with them? Yeah. Anyway, that's you do know the other sort of way. One of the definitions of public service is sort of equivalent to contempt for the audience. We know better. Yeah.
Well, yeah, all right, thanks. Back to the original question about the content.
Sorry.
No, it's no. I love to hear about the youngsters, how you love them. But the radio is the in general speaking, radio is the most intimate media that you can have. It's the intimate. You can go to the shower with radio. You listen radio when you are driving the car. God bless private cars. Fuck off public transportation. And basically, and because of that, it's got to be local. The content's got to be local. It's fairly often it's something to do with the culture, whether it's like in Stockholm or like in Helsinki or in Dublin or in Copenhagen. It can be like urban culture. We, as a Radio Helsinki, want to be a super brand of urban culture in our content, which is Helsinki. We want to take the core of theater, of contemporary art, of the music. Do we curate the content? Yes, but I believe there have been many times they have said the word curate. I believe that in the future our youngsters will curate as consumers their content that they want to hear themselves. And the digital platforms are going to give the possibility to curate. If I want to hear sports news now, I'll just click something and the sports news will come. If I want to hear my local Helsinki news, I will click. If I want to hear music, I will click the genre I want. And the radio stations and likes like Spotify will learn what is my favorite genre, and they will play me new music from that genre, if you know what I mean. So basically, it'll be even more complicated, the future, in terms of content.
I mean, a very brief point. I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of a young person today, I mean, that can be can be a 15, that can be also a 35 or a 40-year-old growing up, and if you're a big music fan, I mean, if you put yourself in their shoes, I mean, I wish I was young today, because there are so many ways to access what people like, which is, for my case, when I was young, it was music. But you had to actually go and identify where you could fetch the people and identify the people with whom you related to get access to the music that you liked. And radio was really central to it, and it's still today. So, I mean, that's what I said. I mean, there are so many opportunities for these young people and it's great to hear that actually Denmark's radio is actually, adjusting to the behaviors of these young people. So, I mean, the future is not bleak at all. I just think that everybody agrees that, to fetch this data, to fetch this music, young people are going to follow so many different routes, and radio has to be there in the way, and but I mean, it was great for radio station 30 years ago. You know, they were like, you listen to us now. It's 3 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, if you missed, well, tough. You know. Now, I mean, it's great. You can have it. The listener can tell you, well, fuck off. You know, I want to listen to what I want to listen to, and it's great. I think it's a land of opportunity. But radio is still very much, you know. I mean, it's the only one of the only. That's the only media when you actually can actually listen to it and say, wow, this is a great song. That's lovely. It's old-fashioned, but it's lovely as well. So it's two sides of a coin.
I just want to add to that. And somebody in a panel yesterday said that due to YouTube, music history is not interesting anymore in the sense that music from different times are available at the same level. It's just one click away, which gives even also the broadcaster a challenge. I can just see that we recently, well, 3 years ago, so it's not that recent, but we opened a new channel inspired by BBC 6. Now it's called P6. And we do play a fairly broad variety of music because the focus is the young audience, but the focus is the people who love music. It's a different way of approaching a channel than what we did early on when we were looking into target groups. We were trying to figure out what the 15 to 25 years old were interested in. And we had all our media research department, they were figuring out that they were eating this kind of pate and they were reading this kind of books and they were, well, they were never reading a book, and there was a couple of other items, and then they made a channel for the 15 to 25 years old, but it didn't work. It was only people above 35 who was listening, and we have had many examples of this kind of media department structured channels that has only had a very short life, because as you were mentioning, because the accessibility of culture from different places and different times are available, the interest and the knowledge of music of young people today are very different from when I was a teenager, which also means that you can broadcast, you can produce material.
Now that's not necessarily bad. I paint it like it's appalling, like it's nailing Jesus Christ to the cross or something, you know. But it's not all bad, but it does indicate the way stuff is going. So talk and personality will be a big feature of standard linear radio. See, there's two models going on. There's the linear radio, which is still the bread and butter. You must get people listening. You must get the women and the younger housewives and the families and all listening to your radio as well. You can't just depend on music fans. So there's two things going on. There's the national conversation, the personalities, the daytime continuous audience, and then there's the other side of music radio. And my God, linking those two together for public broadcasters is very complicated. Whereas if you're a commercial broadcaster, it's really simple. You play the obvious songs, you read out the internet gossip, you have a few phone calls, you give things away. Bingo! But it's not so simple for public radio.
But how about commercial radio? Is it the same thing, same deal?
It's kind of the content is king, as I told you earlier on, and whether it's talk or whether it's music, it's still the content. And we in Radio Helsinki, we are famous for always presenting the new artists, the new superstars that will be superstars tomorrow. And I still believe that radio is the main channel for presenting the new artists, new songs, even for the youngsters. The most important, if you are a radio boss, is to kind of clarify to yourself who is your target audience, what is the segment, the market segment you are trying to reach. Once you've done that, then you have to think who are the radio personalities you have to hire in order to get your target audience kind of catched into into the radio, and what are the other like multi-platforms, the other like apart from FM, what are the other channels how to reach the audience. But the content, it is the king, and I believe, because I'm old as well, I lived when there was World War about ish, but I believe in talk. I believe in talk and talkative radio, where you can interact with the audience, where interactive kind of a factor is extremely important. It'll grow in the future.
Just a short addition. This, of course, content is king, but in any games, the king is always the one that everybody is going to beat, whether it's in chess or in any other games. And with this new renaissance of talk radio, for example, in Denmark, a new battlefield has opened, because it's not only the broadcasters who have an interest in reaching a younger audience. The printed press, the newspapers, are in desperate need for new readers. And as soon as, at least in my country, the talk radio go too far into the area of the newspapers, the news talk, then trouble coming up. And right now, our parliament is having a discussion about the kind of the ambition or the rules and restrictions for public service radio in the next 4 years. There's a strong lobbyism from the printed media side to reduce the use of news material produced by the public service broadcaster or TV on digital platforms, because then you compete with all the sales models the printed newspaper wants to exploit. You know, they did like anybody else. They gave content away for free before they realized that it was the king and you should not give him away for free. And now they want to make a business model, and here comes public service being paid for by the taxpayers or the licensee payers, and suddenly there's a new conflict coming up, and the battle is always towards the young audience, because their patterns of consume and lifestyle is always a challenge for all of us. I mean, I'm sure that if this was a debate back in Greece before the birth of Christ, we would have been talking about the youngsters. That was a problem. It has always been like that, and we're always searching for why are they doing so many strange things, and they're hard to get and grab. So, long story, it's just off the track.
Unfortunately, it's 4 o'clock, and I promised that people here, they can catch their flights, and it means that you have to. Yeah, it means that now we have to stop talking. But am I right if I say that in future of radio we can see big challenges with techniques and technology? But the content is going to be the king, and music is going to be part of that content. And what else is there? We have to get more young people here.
and the public broadcasters have to be smarter about the way they use music. They have to be smarter than the commercial sector. Yeah.
And the future is now, anyway.
Yeah,
the future is now. Wow.
Okay. There's one question over there.
Yeah, radio is going to be multi-channeled, and one channel is live. It's live. It's events. It's you have to see your company as a media company, which is giving consumers all kinds of activities, and one of those is to be present everywhere where are the audience, wherever.
Are you guys facing the same?
They are saying the same.
Yeah, it's all the same. Yeah. Just one thing you mentioned live, which is something we hadn't mentioned. One thing that radio does better, cheaper, and simpler than any other medium is live. Yeah, really, it does that, and it needs to play that. It's not okay. There's the whole listen back bit, but what radio does essentially, it's live, it's simple, it's cheap, and we've got to play to those strengths as well in our programming. Yeah.
Thank you all, and thank you, audience.